B'Shem Hashem na'aseh v'natzliach. Everybody, I'm very humbled that all of you guys love the Mishnah so much. And guess what? You're in for a big surprise. It's going to be my father's second yortzeit, me and Mr. Ganjan here. Baruch Hashem. Baruch Shechianu v'gimanu l'zman hazeh. We're finishing the whole Seder. Seder is much more than a tractate. The whole order of what? Zera'im. The Talmud has 6 orders. Zera'im, Moed, Nashim, Nezikim, Kodshim, Taharot. So actually, my Rebbe, Reb Tzvi Berkowitz Shlita, he said, from Rav Ruderman, the Rosh Yeshiva of Ner Israel, you can't give a real Siyama Shas, even if I finished Talmud Bavli a couple of years ago in Sanhedrin almost. That was the last Masechta I was missing, but he said that Rosh Yeshiva Zatzal Rav Ruderman held that you would have to also, to finish all of the Talmud, you have to finish all the Mishnayot, because Shas, by definition, means Shisha Sidre. The Talmud has 6 orders. God willing, tomorrow night we're going to finish the first section of the Talmud, the first order, that talks about the laws of agriculture. Because the greatest believers in God are the farmers, and everybody stay tuned. We'll be on Facebook Live. We're going to give a siyum on Masechta Daf Yomi Shabbat and Masechta Zera'im. And B'Shem Hashem na'aseh v'natzliach, we do the 4th and last chapter of Bikkurim, the first fruits. Androgynous. We're living in a day, we have to have so much compassion for these people that are bi-gender, which means not that they're transgender, chas v'shalom, but they were created with a biological defect. Androgynous is that he has both a female member and a male member. You understand what that is, Mr. Ganjian? What do they call it in Farsi? Yeah, he's bisexual. He's two-sex, but not because he chose to do some crazy surgery, chas v'chalila. This is talked about throughout the Talmud. So, the Mishnah very simply here says that in some ways, yesh derachim shavel lanashim, in some fashion he's considered a man, in some fashion he's considered a woman. Yesh bo derachim shavel lanashim v'nashim, yesh bo derachim she'enu shavel lo nashim v'lo nashim. And actually, very interestingly enough, this is one of the simplest Mishnahs I've ever learned in Talmud. It says this bi-gender person, that downstairs he both has the female organ and the male organ, although a great doctor told me that his male organ is probably a little bit deformed and smaller and in a little bit it's very tragic, but in some ways he's like a man, some ways like a woman, some ways he's like both, and some ways he's like none of the above. So there's a lot of multiple choice here. So let's go ahead to the second Mishnah, Mr. Ganjian. It says, Ketzad Shavel Nashim. And of course, we're learning Leilu Nishmat, my father, Shlomo Chaim ben David, and your mother, what's his name? What's her name, Mr. Ganjian? Akhtar Bat Aziz, because Mishnah is Neshama. But parenthetically, a lot of people are paranoid and worried and in grief that they can't say Kaddish because they're high risk and they don't want to come to synagogue. The best thing you could do is learn Mishnah. It's even more powerful than Kaddish because Mishnah is the same words as Neshama, soul, and it'll light up the soul of your deceased. So how are these androgynous, these bi-gender person, similar to men? Metame beloven kenashim. Which means, if he has, in the ancient times, there was some type of sickness called ziva. Ziva is this white pus that comes out of your private part that makes you extremely, extremely non-pure. You can't enter the temple. it's something very sick. So if a man, androgynous, a bigender man-woman, has this pus come out of him, he's going to be considered a female zav. The pus, he's not going to be considered a female zava, which has a hey. Those people that know common Hebrew grammar know, but he's going to get fall under the category of a male zav. Because a female, the Kahati says, aval isha eno naset zava beloben. A woman that has white yolk come out of her does not automatically become a ziva. So in this case, since he has this substance, this pus, white pus, coming out of him, he would be a zav. Umitatef ka'anashim. Wow! We're so lucky, Shlomo. We're learning this Mishnah. One of my famous lectures, which I was arguing against, this week's parsha is a treasure trove. Kiteit say, a man is not allowed to dress over. No, Jason Lipson, it's not. It's something that is snow white. Yeah. The semen of a man is translucent. This thing is something else. Ziva is something else. We need to ask a medical doctor what it is. They don't really know. It may have been an ancient sickness, which doesn't exist anymore. But to make a long story short, if the androgynous has this pus come out of him, he gets the impurity of a male. He's considered under the male category. Also, he's not allowed to dress up as a woman. So that's one of the mitzvot from this week's parsha, that Shelo yilbash simlat isha. So it's he has to, I guess, identify as a man, not as a woman. V'noseh avalo niseh ke'anashim. Wow, my goodness. See, it's so important. God bless my Rosh Yeshiva Zatzal's Rav Ruderman, that said it's so important to learn all the Mishnayot. It's such an amazing thing here. It says, this androgynous is allowed to marry a woman because it seems that he's more male-like. I don't know. It's a tragedy. Somebody that's born like this, it's really difficult to fit into society. We must have a lot of compassion. Oh my God. The Talmud, yeah, Jason, if he identifies as a woman, it's nonsense. He has to follow halacha. If he's a Torah observant Jew, then he has to follow. This is what the Talmudic law, which is also from Moses, our oral law, says. That the androgynous, I, for example, never learned this Mishnah in my life, and I'm just fascinated about the ramifications, people. This person has to dress like a man and can marry a woman, and he's not allowed to marry a man. If he marries a man, it's like homosexuality, and somebody that actually has relations with the androgynous is like he had relations with a man. So sexually, the halacha deals with him. Now this would be, Shlomo Leib, Kiruv Torah. That's what we're saying very clearly here, that black and white. This androgynous, very fascinatingly enough, I mean, we have to look up the Rambam and the Shulchan Aruch, but it doesn't seem anybody argues on this. So he would be he sexually identifies as a man, ladies and gentlemen. Which means he dresses like a man, and he would not, if somebody rapes him, other man rapes him, that man would be put to death, or it would be that man that has relations with such an androgynous would be considered that he has done a homosexual act. Look at the Talmud in Yevamot, Talmud Bavli. That you could look the Mishnah 8, Mishnah chapter 8, Mishnah 6. Ve'imo yoshevet alav bedam tahor k'anashim. Oh, this is also fascinating. Now, Shlomo Leib, that's above our pay grade because this Mishnah doesn't have any Talmud on it. I honestly don't know if he can get a sexual surgery and then if it's halachically permitted. That's some homework I need to do. Would he halachically, if he feels more like a woman, be allowed to remove his male member and identify as a woman? That's a good question. I don't have the answer for that. This bi-gender person. But when his mother gave birth to him, she only is impure for 7 days. After 7 days, she would be able to enter the temple. Because a woman, I think basically we're saying that since he can't become pregnant, this androgynous, we deal with him. We learned a few weeks ago in the Parsha, in smack middle in Vayikra, right, Mr. Ganjian? That when a woman gives birth to a girl, how many weeks is she tameh?
4 weeks.
Yeah, 2 weeks, and then it says in the Torah, Isha ki tazriya v'yalda zachar, she's tameh for 7 days, and then 33 days she has to wait. All the blood is tahor. And if she's a woman, it's double. It's 2 weeks shitameh and 66 days. So how about this person, this androgynous? Again, sexually, his mother would 7 days be impure. She wouldn't be able to have relations with her husband. And then after 33 days, she gave birth to a boy, she'd have to bring her offering to the temple. Oh, wow! This is fascinating. We know that there's so much, the Me Too culture, there's so much, God forbid, there is such a thing. We cannot deny it. Men have a tendency to take advantage of women and seduce them. And women, Nashim da'aton kalat, can get seduced. So therefore, there is a very, very important halacha. Jason is saying, is he halachically required to be a man and can have relations with a woman, but his male organ is compromised? He's not a... Yeah, exactly. What basically is going on right now is this bi-gender person is allowed to have relations with a woman, and he sexually identifies as a man and can get married. But this bi-gender person is not allowed to be alone with a woman in a room. Again, because sexually there's a lot of yichud. We know how many countless, even Orthodox men that are supposedly religious have cheated on their wives and slept with their secretaries. That's why there's many, many Jewish laws. I have classes on this, where a man and a Jewish woman are not allowed to be alone in a room because one thing could lead to another. And we know that the most powerful urge, it says in the Kabbalah, after wanting to live is to be sexual. So therefore, the androgynous, the bi-gender person, is not allowed to be alone with a woman, just like a man is not allowed to be alone with a woman. Laws of Yichud. Ve'eno didun im abanot k'anashim. The Gemara in Baba Basra says that Mi shemet ve'iniach banim ve'banot b'zman she'anuchim b'shem kedem ba'anomana. So he says if a man died and had a lot of boys and girls, if he has a lot of property to sustain the girls, the boys inherit all his property, all the real estate, and then the women, his daughters, collect all the rent, get supported by their brothers, and the brothers basically manage the property and own them, and they have to give the dividends to the girls so they can live comfortably. If there's not a lot of real estate left over by the deceased person, then guess what? Look how pro-women the halacha is. The boys have to go beg for money door to door, be beggars, but the girls get the profits of the real estate. Isn't that a beautiful halachot, Mr. Ganjian?
Yes.
So our Mishnah comes to teach us, in a case where the real estate is not making enough money, this androgynous is considered a man, and he has to man up. Let's say basically this is what happens. Let's say somebody passes away. He doesn't have any apartment buildings or condos. Yeah, Shlomo Leib, the reason is because it's very immodest for a woman to go door to door and beg for money. She could be taken advantage of, and it's not appropriate. So this androgynous, since we said probably has facial hair, this bigender person would go ahead and give all the money to his sisters, the rental income, and he would have to go, like the boys, beg for money door to door. Okay? V'over al bal takif u'bal tashchit u'bal tetamel lemetim kanashim. Wonderful. All this stuff is from this week's parasha. Just like a woman is allowed to shave her entire head, like the Hasidic women. But a man is not allowed to cut his peyot. Some say the peyot go from here till, look, on bottom, right? It's a big sin. When you get a haircut, everybody, I have a problem with a lot of my congregants that are not so religious, but they're officially Shomer Shabbat. Jewish men are not allowed to cut this area where my hand is right now. Especially from here to here. There's different opinions. Some say it goes all the way from the forehead. Some say, but your sideburns, androgynous, is not allowed to chop them off. You understand, Mr. Ganjian? Like a man. And moving right along, if he's a Kohen, he's not allowed to go to the graveyard. He's also not allowed to shave his beard or his head. Like a young boy, when he gets a haircut, they have to be careful not to shave off his sideburns. So whether it's his beard, he's not allowed to cut off with a razor, or get a haircut and cut off his beard. He's obliged to follow all the commandments of the Torah like a man. So therefore, if he's a Kohen, he's not allowed to go to the cemetery. If he's a male, bigender, androgynous Kohen, he's not allowed to go to the cemetery. And he has to put on tefillin and do all of the laws that a Jewish man needs to do. Okay, everybody? Thank you for watching. In 10 minutes, we're going to do Zera Shimshon. It's the Heilige Rav Shimshon Nachmani's Yortzeit tonight, 6th of Elul. So, please stay tuned. In 10 minutes, we're going to start the Zera Shimshon. Elijah Kohanim, please join us again in 10 minutes.